an in-principle deal to crack down on big money donors ahead of the next federal election. Basically, the idea is to cap the influence of billionaires. Now, the details are still being discussed, but the legislation is expected to include limits on how much a party can spend in an individual seat, how much a candidate can receive each year. James, I know that this will not be liked by perhaps some independents who think that they rely on donation money to get over the line, but there is definitely an argument that the less influence of outside forces in politics, the better.
Look, it's very difficult for me to comment on this in terms that we in the coalition are yet to see the final bill. It hasn't been introduced into the Parliament, and it'll need to go through our shadow cabinet processes and go through the process of the party room. But any change to how we govern our elections in Australia need to ensure that neither side is advantaged. We need to make sure there is transparency, and we need to make sure that the voters are empowered and that those secret interests, especially Mr Simon Holmes à Court and all those secret backers of the Teal movement, are certainly held to account.
Do you think, Terry, that it does have the potential to disadvantage independents and small parties?
Well, I agree with James about not having the detail, Caleb, but yes, look, I think there is an issue here. I think one of the issues that we have to have a conversation about as a country, I think, is the cost of our election campaigns, the cost of standing for Parliament, the cost for good people to stand for Parliament, whether they're in a party or independents. Look, I think the real issue here for me is I don't really care about billionaires. A pool of them and their money are often soon parted. As long as there is full transparency and disclosure in real time, and that effectively we know where that money is coming from. But the other thing, and James is right about getting the balance right, because while the Labor Party's unions and their mates are still being able to funnel money into the Labor Party and into Labor campaigns, there's always going to be a disadvantage there that the coalition has struggled to even try and match.
Yeah, correct. Why don't we just swap out donations for just Qantas upgrades for everyone? Let's see how that goes. Now, you might remember former South Australian opposition leader David Speers. He had to resign from politics recently after he was charged with supplying drugs. Well, the Liberal candidate who's running to replace him at a by-election this weekend says that we should have mandatory drug testing for politicians. Amanda Wilson, she believes that random drug testing would increase people's confidence in politicians. She says a lot of other people in the workforce have to submit to drug testing, and politicians are making legislation. They should be held to a higher standard. James, would you be happy to subject yourself to random mandatory drug tests?
I would be happy to submit myself to random drug tests. But actually what we do need is politicians with common sense. So we should have a test for common sense, because I'm pretty sure Anthony Albanese is neither drunk nor high on drugs, but a lot of the decisions he makes look like they're made by someone who is drunk or high on drugs. So we need more politicians with common sense.
What do you reckon, Terry? I mean, you know, you might have to... if they had like an alcohol test, you'd have half the Parliament banned from ever entering the building. But how about drug tests?
Well, certainly on Wednesday night when Parliament gets up early, but certainly in my day working in Parliament, there was never much time outside of that for drinking or drugging. But certainly I think if other occupations, other industries need drug testing or have random drug testing, and politicians who make legislation, whether it's state or federal, actually mandate these sorts of things, they should be subject to it themselves.
Now, you'd like to think that the people administering Year 12 exams would know what they're doing, but how bad is this story out of Victoria? At least 3 exams have been compromised. The Victorian Curriculum and Assessment Authority has admitted that entire parts, or at least very similar parts of the exams, were accidentally included in the instruction booklets for business management, specialist maths and legal studies exams, which has effectively allowed students to cheat. The Herald Sun reported that the authority discovered the issue in mid-October after being alerted that students had been sharing online how they were able to highlight blank spaces on pages of booklets, which, when pasted into Word documents, revealed hidden questions and case studies. Terry, you're down in Victoria. Who's running the show? I mean, if the people who administer the exams can't even get the exams right, how bad is that?
Well, if there's a choice between a cock-up and a conspiracy, go for a cock-up in Victoria every time, because we have cock-ups left, right and centre, and this is just one of them. Look, and I'm not tech savvy, so I'd never be able to get away with actually trying to do that. But the fact that the kids were able to do that and preparing for their BCE or HSC exam just beggars belief. I mean, back in my day, I mean, we didn't have all this fancy stuff. I mean, we had to use old HSC exam papers to practice on. It wouldn't have happened. But certainly, I think when it comes to Victoria, it's not a state of excitement anymore. It's a state of absolute cock-up.
Yep, and you know, even though we've had a laugh about it, it is actually serious, because there are kids now who potentially could have their exams thrown out because of all of this. You know, this is serious stuff for a kid trying to leave at the end of Year 12. James Terry, thank you so much for your time.